when people are completely destroyed by the amount of symptoms, the big question is, this can't be normal. There must be something wrong with me. So the question is it normal?
Yeah, and that's the golden question, right? What's normal here? And the list of symptoms is long, potentially. It doesn't mean that everyone gets all the symptoms. It means that the nervous system and the brain and the body has many different ways to manifest the withdrawal state. So symptoms like flu-like symptoms is like one of the most common symptoms. Dizziness, pains, gastrointestinal symptoms, pains even, like physical pains, muscle pains you can get, jerkiness, irritability. It's a long list. Like sudden outbursts of either anger or irritability or crying, like these sudden bouts of crying is a pretty normal symptom. Nightmare, vivid dreams, fatigue, just complete beyond tiredness, but fatigueness in some way, which is obviously makes sense because it requires a lot of energy for the body to rebuild its receptors. And while it knows how to do that, it takes a lot of energy, and that energy has to come from somewhere, obviously. We don't just have a huge reservoir for the body to take, leaving you tired and fatigued and in a general sense, in a negatively oriented mode of mind, I would say. So it's completely normal that your thoughts are more negative than usual. Human thoughts do tend to be overly negative in the first place, but here, because your nervous system is kind of in a threat state, at least it thinks there is no threat, but it may feel exactly like there is a threat. And obviously, to cope with that situation, imagine there being an actual threat, our thoughts need to be negatively oriented. So there's a lot of negative thoughts going on usually. That's completely normal symptoms, expected even. And it could be like mood swings is a classic one, sleeping problems, and what we would call inner restlessness, and what people would tend to call anxiety, because it doesn't feel like anxiety, can go to the lengths of, like in the extreme states, it's what we know as akathisia, which is Greek for can't sit still, akathisia, which is just the worst degree of inner restlessness. Like you can't sit still. There's no way to find peace, no way to find rest. And you may dramatically and drastically try to do things to occupy your mind, but when you're in akathisia, it's really difficult. Like it's a deep, strong opponent to be. It's very difficult to come off, to get out of that situation. And obviously, if that happens, akathisia, the first solution, depending on the individual situation, would to be taper slower. Like akathisia is brutal. But still, it sounds so easy when I say that. No matter what symptoms we have here, the solution is to wait. The solution is to wait. Just as a broken leg would heal or a wound would heal. Like the mindset you have there, the trick is to bring that into withdrawal state. It's just more difficult because with a broken leg or a wound, we have pretty, I would say most people, near full confidence that our body knows how to heal it, right? Because it has a visible. And we don't go into the whole rumination and worrying about whether that would heal. I think not. Here, because the symptoms are so beyond what we'd imagine, beyond what we're told, which is a huge part of the problem, so brutal, so long-lasting, we naturally get into thinking a lot about it and ruminating and starting to analyze it. And actually, in fact, we want, and that's the importance of normalizing it, to do that as little as possible, if that makes sense. Or to leave it alone, it'll heal.
But you can confirm that the withdrawals can be brutal.
The withdrawal symptoms can be the most brutal part that you've ever experienced. Obviously, that's always, when we describe the symptoms in that way, that's from a taper that was too fast. Like the whole idea of tapering is to make them manageable. This is how it can look if tapering too fast or incorrectly.
Is it true that most people will taper too fast at some point when they hit the hyperbolic curve?
Yeah, so getting back to the hyperbolic curve thing, most people, when coming off their drug, I would say, it's more normal to, at some point in the taper, because there is this element of unpredictability, right? We can't completely predict what the next reduction can be for it to cause manageable symptoms. So most people will, during their taper, at some point make a too big reduction. Now, because it's unpredictable. And that's not dangerous as long as we react to it, take that as a sign of slowing down the taper. So when you do that, when you make a reduction that was too big, meaning that it created symptoms that were stronger and more intense than from your previous reductions, that reduction will come, believe me. Two choices really. You can either act quickly and resume the dose that you were previously stabilized at. Don't go above. I see that sometimes because the symptoms were so drastic they just suddenly up the dose to where they were many months ago, just to get, like, as an act of desperation. Don't do that. That will confuse the system more. Just resume the dose you were previously stabilized at, and then stabilize, and then make the next reduction slower. So that's one solution. Increase the dose and taper slower. Or if the symptoms are not like completely debilitating, if you judge and assess that you can actually be in them, they're just worse than you'd expected, then just hold it out. Stick to it. Wait. And then whatever you decide of those two, make sure, absolutely sure, that the next reduction is smaller, and also way smaller than the previous ones. Because if the next reduction is the same size, then you can expect even worse withdrawal symptoms than that, and we don't want that to happen. So most people will at some point make a reduction that was too big, leaving them in severe withdrawal symptoms, and that's, as long as you act on it, it's perfectly fine and safe.